Welcome to this explainer. You know, it's a fascinating thing about history. Every civilization, from the absolute height of the Roman Empire right down to our modern, highly interconnected nations, tends to believe its monetary system is entirely unique. But when we look back, history reveals a remarkably different reality. Let's dive in.
Think of money as a continuous story of human civilization. Sure, the technology has evolved drastically. We've moved from Roman silver coins to paper certificates and now to vast, complex digital networks. But the underlying financial mechanisms, they've remained incredibly consistent. The core incentives driving these systems have barely shifted in over 2,000 years.
We're looking at different tools across entirely different centuries, but with remarkably similar incentives. Throughout all of history, there has always been this fundamental desire by those in power to create more money, without necessarily creating more real value. And to truly understand the architecture of today's financial world, we really have to look back 2 millennia.
Part 1. The Roman denarius.
For centuries, the denarius was quite literally one of the most trusted currencies in the world. Now, unlike modern money, its value didn't depend on institutional confidence or government promise. It depended strictly on the measurable physical quantity of precious silver contained right there within the coin itself. At the Roman mint, a coin's purchasing power was completely inseparable from its physical composition. It was what it weighed.
But as you might guess, the Roman Empire eventually ran into a rather difficult mathematical problem. As the empire expanded, its expenses grew exponentially. They had to pay armies of legions, build vast networks of roads, maintain sprawling cities, and defend ever-widening borders. The math simply stopped working. Eventually, physically mining enough new silver out of the earth to meet these massive obligations became entirely impossible.
So rather than dramatically and publicly raising taxes, Roman authorities found a quieter solution. They began transitioning from the pure silver denarius to a copper-diluted version. The state would take the old pure silver coins collected through taxation, melt them down, and essentially dilute them with cheaper metals, like copper. To the average citizen walking through the market, the new coin looked completely identical. It bore the exact same imperial portrait, but its actual substance had been fundamentally altered.
The mathematical illusion at play here is actually pretty profound. Imagine taking 100 grams of pure silver, which historically produced, say, 25 coins. By mixing that silver with enough copper, the state could now mint 50 coins instead. They essentially doubled the monetary units without expanding any actual wealth. And for a time, the illusion worked. But eventually the market noticed. Prices rose, and the purchasing power of every single coin slowly but surely declined.
Part 2. From metal to trust.
Over the centuries, humanity witnessed a massive evolution from strict geological constraints to institutional trust. Gold eventually replaced silver as the dominant reserve asset, and then paper certificates eventually replaced the physical metals themselves. Originally, those paper notes were simply a promise, a direct, verifiable claim on gold stored safely in a vault. The paper itself had no intrinsic value. Its worth came purely from the metal it could be exchanged for.
This progression is both steady and distinct. We start way back in the 1st century with physical silver, move into the 19th century with gold-backed paper, and finally arrive in the 21st century with modern fiat currency. Today's fiat currencies possess absolutely no intrinsic precious metal backing. Instead, they rely entirely on institutional trust. We trust that others will accept them tomorrow, and we trust that the system itself will remain stable. So the physical limitations largely vanished, and the constraints became entirely institutional. Now, this shift represents one of history's greatest innovations because it allowed for massive economic expansion far beyond the natural availability of gold or silver. But it's crucial to realize that it also fundamentally changed the rules of the game. Creating new money no longer required the physical discovery, mining, and extraction of precious metals.
Part 3. The digital dilution.
Today's monetary system operates very differently from ancient Rome, yet a remarkable similarity remains. When modern governments issue debt, central banks can essentially purchase that debt simply by introducing new money into the financial system, electronically.
Modern money creation requires no furnaces, no physical silver or copper, and no heavy minting presses. It relies entirely on digital balance sheets. New monetary units can be created with just a few electronic keystrokes. Yet, just like the Roman citizens holding their newly minted, diluted coins, modern citizens look at their digital bank accounts and physical banknotes, and everything appears perfectly unchanged.
the numbers look exactly the same. The ancient method relied on diluting metal in fiery furnaces. The modern method relies on expanding digital balance sheets. But the underlying economic mechanism? It's nearly identical. If the quantity of money grows significantly faster than the actual production of real goods and services, each unit naturally represents a smaller claim on real resources. The technology has evolved, certainly, but the dilution of purchasing power remains exactly the same.
Part 4. The silent tax.
There is a constantly shifting relationship between money and real value. Now, most people tend to believe inflation simply means higher prices at the grocery store. But the historical sources suggest something much, much deeper. Inflation is not merely the phenomenon of higher prices, it's fundamentally a structural shift in value itself.
Think of it this way. Inflation is a structural shift where an increasing number of monetary units are forced to compete for the exact same real economic resources, and this results in a gradual loss of purchasing power for each individual unit. This process is often described as one of the least visible forces in finance, not because it's actively hidden from us, but because it unfolds so slowly and so quietly that each individual step feels largely insignificant to the everyday observer.
Real resources, things like homes, food, energy, and productive assets, remain finite. There's only so much to go around. When more and more monetary units compete for these exact same resources, those assets naturally become more difficult to acquire. Your savings might appear completely unchanged numerically in a bank account, but they quietly buy less than they once did. The figures remain, but the underlying value evolves.
Part 5. Final reflection.
While empires inevitably rise and fall, and while technologies transform from silver to paper to digital code, money ultimately remains exactly one thing. It is a claim on real goods, real energy, and real human productivity. The technology we use to represent that claim may evolve over centuries, but the core economic principles beneath it, they rarely do.
It's often said that those who understand money understand civilizations. We don't study history simply to admire the past or look at old artifacts. We study history because it is the key to quietly explaining our future. The economic lessons of Rome are, in so many ways, the exact same economic lessons of modern nations today.
And so, we are left with a rather profound, timeless question. Can societies actually become wealthier simply by creating more monetary units? History has witnessed countless attempts to answer this very question over the last 2 millennia, and it has preserved every single answer. By understanding this, the oldest financial trick in the book, you are now much better equipped to observe the historical parallels happening right now, and to consider what they truly mean for the future of our economy and our civilization. Thanks for joining me in this explainer.